Plants vs. Zombies 2. The nostalgic prequel to the original Plants vs. Zombies 1. A much-loved, entertaining game, and with many aspects. But of course, a lot did not make it into the final game, so today we will be looking at these unused aspects. So to start off with, here we have the Scaredy Shroom. This plant is recognizable from PVZ 1, and would have functioned the exact same way. A long-range shooter, which hides when zombies get close. It would have had a fast recharge and cost 25 sun. Some almanac entries and sprites exist, but honestly wouldn't have been effective in the game. These next unused plants were intended to be the original plants of Dark Ages. They are Pulch Shroom, which would have functioned similarly to the Blooming Heart, Roto Shroom, which would shoot in 8 directions, and could be altered by the player, Dart Shroom, which could only be planted in the first 5 columns, and shot medium damage darts, Zoom Shroom, which functioned similarly to Charred Guard but vanished after 10 seconds, Vacuum Shroom, which functioned similarly to Sweet Potato. Evil Shroom Speed, which was a placeholder test for the orange potion in Dark Ages, and would increase the speed of a zombie that ate it, and Evil Shroom Toughness, which was a placeholder test for the purple potion, and would increase the toughness of a zombie that ate it. Unfortunately, no sprites exist of any of these plants, but either way the concepts remain interesting despite them being unused. Moving on. This is Icy Current. It was basically just an ice variant of Electric Current. It's available in PVZ China, but for unknown reasons wasn't released in the vanilla. Not much to say really. There also at one stage was a plantable marigold, which functioned the same as in PVZ 1, but was unused because it was too easy to farm coins. It had a plant food ability, which would produce lots of coins, but it would also fall asleep. An interesting feature nonetheless. This next unused plant was called simply Sprout. It was originally intended for Zen Garden, but was replaced for the mini plants. Basically, the sprout could grow into other plants. When planted on an odd column, it had a 50/50th chance of growing into a sunflower or pea shooter, but had a 75% to 25% chance of growing into a walnut or tallnut on even columns. It was associated with an unused minigame. A very interesting plant nonetheless. Next up is the Sun Pod. This unused plant had similar properties to Pea Pod. The plant would grow an extra head for each 500 sun you had saved up. It cost 300 sun, and had a fast recharge. No unique sprites of the plant are available. This next plant was the Sun Gun. It was a single-use plant that would attract sun off the screen and shoot it out towards the zombies, dealing 150 damage. It cost 50 sun and has a sluggish recharge. No unique sprites of this plant are available. Then we have a plant that you might have heard about before. The Mini Pea Shooter. This plant is basically like a pea shooter that deals 5 DPS. Its plant food duplicates it in the next column. It costs 25 sun and has a fast recharge. It doesn't work with appease mint or torchwood. Interesting but ineffective. This final plant we will be looking at is called Bernade. Bernade knocks a zombie back then disappears. After a set time, the zombie explodes, instantly killing it and dealing damage equal to the zombie's health in a 4x3 area. Its plant food gave it 3 uses before it disappears. No unique sprites exist of this plant. Just to finish this segment, some plants, such as red stinger, citron, bowling bulb etc. had some original prototype plants before they were finished. There's too much to talk about here, but it's all on the PVZ wiki. I suggest you go give it a read. Also, here is a sprite for an early fire pea shooter. To start off this segment, the first unused zombie we will be looking at is called the Cleopatra zombie. It was meant to be a scrapped event, so kind of similar to a Yeti zombie. The Cleopatra zombie would dance and spawn 4 zombies, in various formations around her, like the dancer zombie from PVZ-1. She would also have functioned like a mini-boss, but was scrapped for being too weak. A lot of the spawn patterns went unused. Sprites and other images exist of this zombie. This next zombie was called Barrel Zombie. It was meant to feature in Dark Ages. It had a similar function to Pharaoh Zombie of ancient Egypt, and is pretty much the same except with different stats. It was based off the Barrel Zombie from PVZ Adventures. Sprites and other media of the zombie exist. Not much else to say. Interesting design though. Next up is the Castle Head Zombie. This zombie was a Dark Ages variant of the Brickhead Zombie and was intended for the unused Dark Ages expansion, which I will talk about later. Anyway, I think it's a cool zombie. It has a good design. Sprites and other media exist of this zombie. This next zombie was called Peasant Rally Zombie. It was intended for the previously mentioned Dark Ages expansion. It would function pretty much the same as a normal rally zombie. Sprites and other media exist of this zombie. Not much else to say really. Another unused zombie was the Veteran Wizard Zombie. It was also from the unused Dark Ages expansion. It was the veteran counterpart to Wizard Zombie, meaning it turned plants into sheep more frequently. Sprites and other media exist of this zombie. Here, we also have some zombies intended for an unused Frostbite Caves expansion. Only art for the zombies was made, and nothing else. These zombies included a Brickhead variant, Veteran Hunter Zombie, Veteran Troglodyte, and a Veteran Weasel Hoarder. There were also some scrapped modern-day expansion zombies, which were leaked. They included a Veteran All-Star Zombie and a Veteran Superfan Imp. Some unused zombies also existed from multiple worlds in game files, but did not have any sprites or graphics etc. I will put them up on screen now. There's a lot to talk about, so please feel free to pause the video to read. Finally, to finish off this segment, I will talk about some miscellaneous aspects. Some zombies had names and almanac entries changed in the final release. And some had designs and animations changed, including the Excavator Zombie. Some also had unused almanac entries and icons. There were also some unused Dark Ages placeholder sprites. And just extra for luck, here is some early unused text for Lost City zombies. Funnily enough, because of the string being named _lost, instead of _lost city, they were likely left over by accident. Overall, the unused content for zombies is very interesting, and the gameplay would be different if they were implemented. Before the final release, there were lots of gimmicks intended for the lawn like graves and other items that ultimately went unused. This segment will be talking about them. So firstly, lots of worlds were initially going to have their own graves. These worlds included Pirate Seas, Wild West, Far Future, Frostbite Caves and Lost City. As you can see, some art exists for these. Additionally, some worlds were even going to have minecarts. These worlds were Ancient Egypt, Pirate Seas and Far Future. There were also some extra unused features which don't have any graphics or media that exist. One of them was called Timed Craters and was a version of the Beghold craters with a 5-second lifetime. They were possibly an early version of the scorched tiles texture, added in the 6.0.1 update. Additionally, there were also 7 unused grid items, which were repurposed for Healer Zombie. There's a lot to talk about, but they're all pretty interesting, so I'll put them up on screen now for you to read. To start off this segment, this first item was called Bacon. This item was able to be collected and duplicated, and clicking the X added 1 bacon, at the cost of 10 coins, but this would increase by 10 coins every upgrade. Example 2 bacon is 20 coins, 3 is 30, etc. The amount of bacon bought cannot be saved, and it probably served a similar function to PVZ 1 bacon, essentially being useless. These next power-ups were called Power-Up Duration 1 and 2. They increased the duration power-ups could stay active, including single-use ones, which allowed for several uses per one. 2 exist in the game files. Next is Valuable Mowers. This was an upgrade that made lawn mowers drop 2 coins instead of 1 at the end of a level. You can see why it was unused, as it really doesn't serve a beneficial purpose. Next up, this power-up was called Color Change Vase. Basically, it enabled you to change the color of a vase, for example changing a brown vase to a green vase. It was added in version 2.4.1, and removed in version 6.2.1. The final power-up we will be looking at was called Cherry Bomb Power-Up. It was an unused power-up that was meant to be used in a piñata party event. It requires sun equal to what the plant would usually cost if modded into a level, but is free on conveyor belt levels. It had a cooldown of 5 seconds. Code still exists for it in the game files and can be modded. This thing looks genuinely OP, to be honest though. This final upgrade is an unknown upgrade. No other information exists for it apart from a sprite. It may be, however, an early design for the extra seed slot upgrade. Nonetheless, it's a good design. Next up, this was an unused collectible treasure chest. Its name simply was 10,000 coins, and unsurprisingly is worth 10,000 coins. It's a chest full of coins and has the description of money bag. Additionally, there also exists an unused zombie lunchbox. It may have been a variant of the used Yeti lunchbox, but would provide you with 100 coins and 1 to 3 keys, unlike the used Yeti lunchbox which would supply 1,000 coins and 3 keys. Finally, to finish this segment, I will talk about a couple extra unused collectible items. Firstly, in the game's files exists a note for Neon Mixtape Tour, despite the world itself not having one. And also, there were in-game collectible items for the power-ups, Power Pinch, Power Toss, Power Snow and Power Zap that exists in the files. This suggests that they may have been dropped by zombies at one point. Unfortunately, no sprites exist for these, and this concludes this interesting segment. To get into it, here we have some unused and early images from the game. They include some early power flame buttons, an unused gold pot for the world map, flags that were meant to appear on world maps, an unused golden taco most likely meant to appear on the free coins button, the cheese that taco would have hung from, unused shortcut endless zone buttons, unused home buttons, an early item that unlocked terror from tomorrow, an unused key sprite. Unused white buttons, unused hero border sprite likely meant for seed packets, early shovel buttons, early Zen garden button, some more early Zen garden buttons, an early icon for walnut first aid, a leftover sprite from some sort of narration editor, a placeholder image found in world map sprites, some early UI, 3 early button UI, an unused arcade button and an unused homeless seed packet, meant for some special events and plants. There was also some initial concept art for Beat and Tactical Cuke. The Beat took inspiration from PVZ Adventures, but was scrapped in favor of Bonk Choy. The Tactical Cuke however would have been a plant/power-up that would blow up all zombies on the lawn, but it was unused because it allegedly would have made gameplay less fun. It was added however in PVZ 2 China version. I have added these two in now as I forgot to add them in the plant section, so sorry about that. These next unused concepts were flower pots. They were going to be used in worlds which didn't have soil or sand, like PVZ 1. There are 4 pots, they are called Crappy Pot, Regular Pot, Gold or Perma Pot, and Hover Pot. They basically had upgrades and worked in a tier system. For example, the Regular Pot is just that, a regular pot, and Hover Pot allowed plants to be planted on any surface. They were scrapped as the concept was deemed too tiring. Here we also have some early designs. They include an early plant food icon, early plant food bar, some early seed packets, early power-ups, some screenshots of original gameplay, an early design for the message after unlocking a plant, some early images of UI level design and setup, and some early sprites of some icons. Overall very interesting, but the designs looked quite raw, so it's understandable the concept art was changed. To start this segment off, codes exist in the files for a tutorial world. This meant that the first 4 levels of the tutorial could have possibly been replayed as part of this world like normal levels. However, this was later scrapped for unknown reasons. A few sprites exist of this world, and they include a note item and background, and some world map pieces. Other than that, no other sprites exist for this tutorial world. Next up we have Time Twister. Now to anyone familiar with PVZ2, you have probably already heard about this world. It was in the game files and later removed, but would have acted as the final world before being replaced by modern day. It would share many similarities with modern day, including gimmicks and zombies. Ultimately, the icon was used for Penny's Pursuit, and it was briefly used for a piñata party event. Still a very cool concept nonetheless. Here we have an early ancient Egypt door overlay. These sprites exist in the files and depict the door of the house open, which implies that a cut scene of the zombies entering the house existed at one point. Not much else to say really. Next up, some early and unused sprites exist for far future. They include a red circle and purple square power tile, some early seed packets showing different power tile designs, the seed packets initially going to be used by power tiles, an unused far future world preview image, and a few unused far future icons. Moving on to Dark Ages, we have an unused gimmick which was called Gravestone Zombie on Destruction. Basically, it would summon a peasant zombie upon its destruction. Next, we have another unused gimmick called Gravestone Mystery Zombie on Destruction. It was presumed to have summoned a random zombie upon destruction, but its code is only set to summon a regular peasant. We also have here Gravestone Mystery Sun on Destruction, which would have presumably given out a random amount of sun when destroyed. Following along from that, here we have the Gravestone Zombie Time Spawner. This gimmick would have summoned peasant zombies with a set time between the game, before it self-destructs, releasing many zombies. There was also a wide variant of spawner called Gravestone Zombie Time Spawner _wide, which just took on a different look and took 2 grid spaces. There were also many other types of unused spawners which would have spawned many types of zombies, including coneheads, bucketheads, and imps. Another unused gravestone was the Gravestone Shortcut. This would have basically made zombies start from the gravestone's location instead of the back of the lawn. Additionally, this next gravestone was called Gravestone Pea Shooter on Destruction. This would have summoned a pea shooter in the place of the grave after it was destroyed. Finally, to wrap up Dark Ages, I will just be talking about some miscellaneous unused features. Firstly, a lane switcher gimmick existed, but this was later repurposed for frostbite caves. Also, sunflowers were initially going to be blocked in the world as they would fall asleep. Plants were also initially going to have slower cooldowns. An unused Dark Ages expansion was also planned to be released, featuring many new aforementioned zombies, but ultimately its code was removed from the files. Moving on to Big Wave Beach now, some prototype names were originally planned. For example, Big Wave Beach's early name was simply The Beach, the Tiki Torture Endless Zone was initially named Coastal Calamity, and the world was originally going to have 20 levels, but this was changed to 32. This was all obviously changed in the code later on. Next up, we have the unused features of the bowling bulb minigame. Early code for the game suggests that it was initially planned to be very similar to Walnut Bowling from PVZ1. Bulbs were also at one stage going to drop coins. Also, on screen now is a graphic for the giant bulb. This would have existed in the game in the place of the current orange bulb. It would have functioned by going through everything in its path. Early seed packets for the bowling bulbs also exist. Moving on to Frostbite Caves. Its prototype name was originally Ice Age and Icebound Battleground was originally named Frozen Fear. Additionally, an unused locked and loaded level exists. It features a field full of frozen plants and the player is given 5 hot potatoes, which need to be used as your plants are repeatedly refrozen. It may have been an early version of Frostbite Caves Day 24, but nonetheless serves as a really interesting and unique concept, which would have been great to play. Finally, for Frostbite Caves, the minigame Whack a Zombie from PVZ1 was actually meant to return as a minigame, evidenced by unused text found in the game files. This is on screen now, so feel free to pause to read it. Some code exists for this minigame, but ultimately no associated sprites exist. Moving on to Lost City, gold tiles were initially going to function differently. They would give out 100 sun instead of 50, didn't give out any upon planting on, their wait time would be longer and they were going to be tied to an in-game event. Basically, if you had the number of plants on gold tiles required, you would gain lots of sun and vice versa. Also, an unused achievement existed called Can't Stop the Rock. In order to get this, a player must kill 5 zombies with the boulder trap. This achievement was scrapped however due to it being too easy. Moving on to Neon Mixtape Tour, the files show that the world was internally referred to as Mondo Mixtape Tour. This was likely an early name. An early lawn also existed, identical to the current one, but has red cups all over the place. This however was likely removed due to a reference to alcohol. Not much else to say really. Next up we have Jurassic Marsh. Its original prototype name was Mesozoic Marsh, and the amount of dinosaurs would have been different depending on part 1 or part 2. However, what is cool is that the Brontosaurus from PVZ China could have possibly been in Jurassic Marsh Part 2. Also, Cold Snapdragon's home world was set to Jurassic Marsh, which meant it would have been unlocked in the world instead of using real-life money. Finally, to finish this interesting segment, I will be talking about modern day. In Beghold, there is an unused blue power-up which depicts a shovel filling a hole. This was likely an early version of Power Shovel. An unused achievement called 99 Undead Balloons also existed, and the aim was to prevent balloon zombies from crossing the 5th column. This was possibly removed however due to its relatively easy nature. Overall, there are many unused world specifics that form unique concepts in the game, which would have changed gameplay, for the better or for worse. To start off this segment, I will be talking about some unused boosts. During development, there existed several different types of boosts obtained via the Zen Garden, instead of just First Strike. They included Bounty Hunter, which increases the chance of a plant to make zombies drop coins, extra toughness, which increases the health of the plant, fast recharge, which decreases the seed slot recharge time, rapid fire, which increases the attack speed of the plant, shovel bomb, which makes plants explode after shoveling, dealing damage in a 3x3 area, and sun discount, which decreases the sun cost of the plant. Overall, very interesting mechanics that unfortunately didn't make it through to the final product. Next, here are some unused incomplete early boost systems, which would have implemented these unused boosts. These exist for most plants up to Dark Ages and give each plant unique perks from using the boost. Some screenshots are up on screen now for you to see. Not much else to explain really. Finally, to finish this segment, here are some unused Zen garden watering animations. Some instant use plants, including Imitator, Power Lily, Glover etc. were all going to have respective unused boosts, like a decrease in sun cost or recharge time. However, this was changed in the final game as instants do not have plant foods. Their original watering animations remain, although only plants up to far future were animated. Still though, some very unique concepts for Zen Garden nonetheless. This next segment is about the unused levels that didn't make it into PVZ 2. To start off with, here we have the empty level. This level has nothing in it as indicated, but was most likely used as a base when creating other levels. Moving on, here we have Sandbox 4 and 5. They are two early test levels, but nothing spawns in them as the XML files no longer exist. These levels will instantly crash upon the final wave. Next, here we have the Egypt, Pirate, Cowboy and Future sandboxes. These are 4 levels with no zombie spawns, and were most likely used to test with the debug menu. Interestingly, the Future sandbox has pre-placed purple power tiles, which is a feature not seen in any other in-game level. Not much else to talk about really. We also have here, Challenge Test, which was a harder version of Ancient Egypt Day 1 with endangered potato mines and faster zombies, that ultimately went unused. This next unused level was an alternative Ancient Egypt Day 25. It was an early version of the Zombat Sphinxinator boss fight, but with minor differences. These include, the Zombat having no visible health bar and no sandstorm animation, but the Zombat still took damage and had phases. Upon the Zombat's defeat, it would jump off screen, causing the game to crash. Moving on, this next level was called Invisi-Ghoul Test. This level was meant to test the unused minigame Invisi-Ghoul from PVZ 1, but ultimately the module and concept were scrapped. Next, we also have Starter Plant Prototype 1, 2, and 3. These levels were most likely used to test pre-placed plants, but still linger in the files. An unused level called Sprout Planting Prototype 4 also exists, and was meant to test the unused sprout planting minigame. Furthermore, here we have Sun Surplus Prototype 1. This level was most likely used to test a modified starting sun amount. There is also a level that acted as a Lost City Part 2 placeholder. In version 3.6.1, a level was used to placehold Lost City days 17 to 32 while they were unreleased. Additionally, an unused level called Padded Room exists, which endlessly spawns pirate captain zombies every 30 seconds. The level cannot be won or lost. The spawning module was later repurposed for Begold. Finally, to end this segment, I have 2 more unused levels to talk about. Firstly, this level was called Speedy Lanes. It was a minigame level that had lanes which would occasionally change color. The color of the lane corresponded to the speed of the zombie. For example, green lanes gave a small speed boost, yellow gave a medium one, and red gave the fastest speed. The surviving level here is endless, so it is impossible to win. A neat concept nonetheless. Secondly, this level was called Column Test. This was a test level that would use a column minigame, making plants be planted in columns. This was based on the minigame column like you see from PVZ 1, but ultimately the concept was scrapped. There are also some mentioned developer levels on screen now, but likely correspond to other unused levels. Overall, an interesting segment, and from what we can gather, most of these levels went unused to test features or gimmicks that didn't fall through. This segment is about unused game features which didn't make the cut. To start off with, here we have an unused energy system called tokens. They would have generated from the Zen Garden every 10 minutes at a maximum of 5. Each game level would then cost 1 token to play. It is possible that tokens were tied with gems. Anyway, this feature was later incorporated into Penny's Pursuit and Arena, probably for the better. Next up, this feature was called Sort World Plants to the Top. Basically, this would have put the world's plants you were playing in at the top of the seed selection menu. Pretty simple concept. We also have here Sort Promotional Plants to the Top, which functioned similarly. However, this would put the promoted premium plant, at the time, at the top of the menu, along with other owned premiums. Additionally, this next unused feature was an early renting system. This would have allowed a player to rent a premium plant for a level for 250 coins each. This was later incorporated into version 9.9.2, although it differs. Next, here is an Endless Zone stats menu. This was a menu accessible from the world map that would show you the scores from all of the endless modes, as well as quick access to them. A great design personally, but it was scrapped. Furthermore, this next unused feature would have allowed the player to try out premium plants directly from the store. This was later scrapped, and Epic Quests would serve a similar purpose. There was also a feature that would have grouped plants by family. This worked by arranging plants by family in alphabetical order in the seed selection menu. For example, poison plants were placed together, fire plants were placed together, etc. Plants not in a family were sorted to the bottom. Moving on, these sprites on screen now were meant to be arena tickets. Unused text suggests that these tickets were once an early version of gauntlets that went unused. They were going to be used for playing arena and purchasing plants, but ultimately the currency was split into mints and gauntlets. Some generic text also exists for the tickets. Next up, here are a few images of unused seed packet designs. Before the Lost City seed packets, all world-based seed packets were initially going to look different from how they were released. I think some of these designs actually look quite nice, but some are also too generic. Not much else to say really. Additionally, we have 2 other unused features here, although there are no sprites for them. The first is an Endless Zone Continue, which would allow you to continue in an endless zone if you were to lose, at the price of 1,000 coins. However, it did not replace your lawnmowers. This feature was later added, but altered slightly so that revival was obtained by watching an ad and could only be done once. There was also a plant suggestions feature, which would have suggested alternatives for a highlighted plant. Overall, 2 interesting mechanics that ultimately were scrapped. Finally, to conclude this segment, here we have an unused jukebox. In the code, data exists for a playable jukebox which would have provided a way to listen to game soundtracks. It is unknown where it can be played, however code suggests it can be played in endless modes and in the pause menu. It has a song list, rewind button, loop button, etc., and many more features. It would have had OSTs for every world. There is a lot of code in the jukebox, so I have only taken a few snippets of it. Overall, there have been many unused features, removed for the better or for the worse, that would have dramatically altered the gameplay and game experience. To start this segment off, here we have some unused marigold costumes. Instead of just the normal white marigold, many other versions existed that ultimately weren't included in the game. There are quite a few, all including different colored petals. There are marigolds with petals colored green, yellow, purple, red, orange, blue and dark blue. The marigold also had a top hat costume. Sprites exist for all of these, and they honestly look quite nice and colorful. Next, here are some unused miscellaneous costumes belonging to some plants. Pea Pod initially had a marching caps costume, and Pepper Pult had two costumes. One had a cap and brown hair, and the other featured a Hachimaki headband. The Pea Shooter also initially had the floppy hat costume, but was later updated and moved to Repeater instead. Overall, a short segment highlighting a few unused costumes that altogether look quite cool. To start off this segment, here we have two lines of unused text that imply that the user may have been able to name Penny in earlier versions. Penny is also internally referenced as Winnie. Not much else to it. Next up, in the files there is a message that is shown if the player tries to plant a tangle kelp on a lily pad or other things related to lily pad. Feel free to pause the video to read it. Moving on, here are a few flavor text snippets from various plants. Multiple plants from far future to dark ages had different flavor text, this means context, prior to their final almanac entries. There is quite a bit, so I have included only a few. Some of these flavor texts are actually quite funny and really capture attention for their engaging nature. Unfortunately, all of these flavor texts went unused and were altered for final release. Finally, although not text, some power-ups had their costs altered. I forgot to add these in earlier, sorry, so they will have to do here. So firstly, all Vasebreaker power-ups were initially going to cost 500 coins. Power Toss was going to cost 400 coins, Power Pinch was going to cost 1,600 coins, Power Zap was going to cost 1,200 coins and Power Flame was going to cost 1,000 coins. I think all of these prices were fairly changed however, and this concludes the segment. This segment will be about the concept art of PVZ2. So firstly, on screen is the earliest known PVZ2 concept. Just look at how primal it is. Here is also some more PVZ2 concepts. You can probably recognize a few plants and other gimmicks, but otherwise it looks very raw. It is also worth noting that there is a ton of concept art. Literally a countless amount of just raw PVZ2 sketches, ideas, logos etc. Just watch me scroll through this long wiki page, which is just all concept art. I must say though that this concept art is instrumental in the game's history as it served as the first developing point. But just from looking at it you can infer how rigid some of this artwork is. Also many concepts look completely different to the final plants/zombies, but nevertheless it remains interesting. In this segment, we will be looking at some unused PVZ2 music. The Worlds, Pirate Seas, Wild West, Far Future, Dark Ages, Neon Mixtape Tour and Modern Day all have at least one unused soundtrack that can be listened to via the files or contained within the PVZ YouTube. They all sound quite good and I will be playing parts of them shortly. So firstly here is an unused Pirate Seas track. It was composed by Laura Shigehara, and the music is available in the PVZ YouTube and uploaded by Laura herself. It sounds very different to the used track. I will play some of it now, so please listen. Next up, here is an unused track for Wild West. This can be found in the PVZ YouTube, and the track was also reused in PVZ All-Stars. Have a listen. Now here we have an unused track of Wave 1 for Far Future. It can be found in version 1.5, and sounds drastically different to the final product. Have a listen. Next, in version 2.3.1, there are 3 different unused tracks for Dark Ages. I will only play one however, but you can find the rest on the wiki. This is the unused mid-wave B. Have a listen. Additionally, here we have some unused Neon mixtape tour music. Some of the original music and placeholders used real songs, including Walk Like an Egyptian and others. There's quite a bit of music, so I am just going to play the unused Choose Your Seeds music and the unused Final Wave music, in that order. Enjoy. Finally, to end this segment, here is some unused modern-day music. There are 2 tracks, but I will only be playing one. Once again, feel free to visit the PVZ2 wiki to listen to the rest of the music. Anyway, here is part of the unused Last Flag music from modern day. Enjoy. Finally, we have reached the end of the documentary. Thanks to all of you who made it to the end, I appreciate it. It's taken so long, but it's finally finished. Anyway, all information was off the PVZ2 wiki, so kudos to them. I will also link all content used in the description. Just a heads up, sorry if any of the media is low quality, it's the best I can do. Some things may also be outdated, scaredy shroom hint hint, but keep in mind the info is accurate for the time of creation. Thank you.